We are humanity. We survived ice ages and plagues. We climbed from prey species to spacefaring civilization in the blink of an evolutionary eye. We don't give up. We don't surrender. And we sure as hell don't let some aliens who've been playing the game for 3,000 years tell us we don't belong here. All ships proceed to final positions. Chin out. The bridge crew erupted in quiet acknowledgments and last-minute preparations. Chen settled back in her chair and closed her eyes for just a moment, visualizing the battle to come. She had done everything she could to prepare. Now it was up to execution, luck, and the training of thousands of personnel across 24 ships. "Admiral," Rodriguez said quietly, "if this works, you're going to be remembered as one of the greatest tactical commanders in human history." Chen opened her eyes. "And if it doesn't work, I'll be remembered as the admiral who led the Third Fleet to annihilation. Either way, in 30 minutes we'll know." The Indomitable's engines fired, accelerating the ship toward the asteroid field. 22 other vessels matched her course. And in the rocks ahead, 400 Kre'tal warships waited with the patience of predators who believed their prey was blind. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. High Commander Zek'thar watched the human fleet approach with the calm satisfaction of a hunter who has spent weeks setting the perfect snare. His primary and secondary eyes tracked the green icons on his tactical display as they entered the outer boundary of the asteroid field. "They are maintaining standard formation," Zek'thar reported. "Defensive posture. No indication of altered alert status. Communication patterns remain unchanged." Perfect, Zek'thar thought. Absolutely perfect. The humans were proceeding exactly as predicted. Their ships moved in a tight cluster, protecting their vulnerable supply vessels, navigating carefully through the asteroid field with active sensors that swept back and forth, looking for navigational hazards. Those sensors saw only rocks. The Kre'tal stealth systems were working flawlessly. "All ships report ready," Zek'thar continued. "Weapons charged. Targeting solutions calculated. We are waiting for your command." Zek'thar watched as the human fleet penetrated deeper into the asteroid field. They were good navigators, he noted. Their ships maneuvered smoothly through the obstacles, maintaining formation integrity while adjusting for the gravitational influences of the larger bodies. Professional work. It would make no difference. "Wait until they reach the optimal kill zone," Zek'thar ordered. "I want them surrounded with no escape routes. Total annihilation." The human fleet continued its advance, seemingly oblivious to the hundreds of warships waiting in the shadows. Zek'thar felt his thorax thrumming with anticipation. This was the moment he had dreamed of. The perfect execution of the perfect plan. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched her own tactical display with very different emotions. Her screen showed not only her fleet but also every single Kre'tal vessel hidden in the asteroids. The gravity wave sensors painted a picture of complete clarity. Capital ships here, fighter carriers there. Weapon platforms scattered throughout the field. "We are entering the kill zone," Rodriguez reported. His voice was steady, but Chen could hear the tension underneath. "Kre'tal ships are holding position. No changes to their deployment. Maintain course and speed," Chen ordered calmly. "All ships execute exactly as planned. Weapons, I want firing solutions on priority targets the moment we go hot." Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Kamani, worked her console with focused intensity. "Solutions calculated and locked, Admiral. Primary targets are the Kre'tal command ships and carriers. We can achieve firing position on 6 priority targets within the first 30 seconds of engagement." Chen allowed herself a tight smile. The Kre'tal had spent weeks positioning their ships for the perfect crossfire. What they hadn't realized was that by concentrating their forces so precisely, they had also created a target-rich environment where every human weapon would have multiple viable targets at point-blank range. "Time to the center of their kill zone?" Chen asked. 90 seconds, Rodriguez confirmed. Chen took a deep breath. This was it. The moment when two completely different tactical philosophies would collide. The Kre'tal believed in overwhelming force, in mathematical superiority, in the traditional application of military power. Humanity believed in adaptation, in turning enemy strength into weakness, in fighting smarter rather than bigger. "All ships," Chen transmitted on the secure quantum channel. "Weapons free on my mark. Execute Titan Protocol Alpha. Make every shot count." 60 seconds. Rodriguez counted down. On the Kre'tal flagship, Zek'thar watched the humans reach the exact center of his trap. Now, he commanded. All ships decloak and fire. Destroy them. Across the asteroid field, 400 Kre'tal warships dropped their stealth fields simultaneously. Energy signatures blazed into existence. Weapon systems came online. Targeting sensors locked onto the human vessels. And in that moment, Zek'thar saw something that sent a spike of cold confusion through his body. The human ships were already moving. Not in panic, not in desperate evasion, but in precise, coordinated maneuvers that looked rehearsed. They weren't surprised. They weren't caught off guard. They were already executing a counterattack. Impossible, he breathed. They couldn't have... His words were cut off as the human fleet split into 7 assault groups, each one diving toward specific asteroid clusters with such precision that it couldn't possibly be spontaneous reaction. They had known, somehow impossibly, they had known exactly where the Kre'tal ships were positioned. Execute Titan Protocol. Chen's voice rang across her bridge. All ships engage. The Battle of Sigma Draconis Seven had begun. The first 30 seconds of the battle would later be analyzed in military academies across 20 species as a perfect example of what happens when tactical surprise is reversed. The Tux Indomitable rolled on her axis, while simultaneously firing her main railgun at a Kre'tal capital ship that had been hidden inside a hollowed asteroid. The tungsten penetrator crossed 3 kilometers in a fraction of a second and punched completely through the enemy vessel's shields and hull. The Kre'tal ship, which had been powering up its weapons for a devastating first strike, instead exploded in a cascade of secondary detonations as its reactor containment failed. Around the Indomitable, 6 other human cruisers executed similar maneuvers. Each one targeted a specific Kre'tal command ship with railgun fire, while simultaneously launching clouds of missiles at fighter launch bays and weapon platforms. The Kre'tal had planned for human ships to be caught in a devastating crossfire. Instead, the humans were already firing, already moving, already turning the Kre'tal's carefully calculated firing solutions into useless data. Targets Alpha through Foxtrot eliminated, Lieutenant Kimani reported with fierce satisfaction. 6 Kre'tal command vessels destroyed or crippled in the first volley. But the Kre'tal weren't helpless. 400 ships, even caught by surprise, represented an enormous amount of firepower. Particle beams and plasma torpedoes began to fill the space between asteroids. The Kre'tal had lost the advantage of perfect coordination, but they still had numbers. Incoming fire, the sensor officer called out. Multiple lock-ons. Evasive maneuvers. The Indomitable dove toward the surface of a large asteroid, using the rock as cover while her point defense systems engaged incoming missiles. Laser turrets tracked targets with computer precision, destroying warheads before they could impact. A plasma bolt splashed against her shields, sending ripples of energy across the protective barrier. Shields at 70%, the engineering officer reported, redistributing power to forward quadrants. Chen watched her tactical display as the battle evolved in real time. The 7 assault groups of human ships were executing their assignments with precision. Group Alpha was targeting Kre'tal command vessels. Group Beta was focused on the fighter carriers. Group Charlie through Golf were engaging the weapon platforms and destroyers, prioritizing targets based on threat assessment and firing solutions. It looked chaotic to an outside observer, but it was actually a carefully choreographed dance that her fleet had rehearsed in simulation 100 times. Rodriguez, Chen ordered. Signal the Vancouver. Time to reveal our second surprise. 3,000 kilometers away, deep within the asteroid field, the Tux Vancouver had been hiding for 3 weeks. The support ship had arrived on what appeared to be a ballistic trajectory, mimicking debris ejected by a solar storm. She had settled into a depression on a large asteroid, powered down to minimum levels, and waited. Now Captain Jennifer Martinez received the signal she had been anticipating for weeks. All hands battle stations. Drop the camouflage. Bring the reactor to full power. I want weapons hot in 30 seconds. The Vancouver's exterior coating fell away, revealing her true nature. She wasn't just a support ship. She was a heavily armed arsenal vessel that had been loaded with enough missiles to qualify as a flying weapons depot. Her crew had spent weeks pre-calculating firing solutions for targets all around her position. It was also exactly the kind of over-preparation that made them predictable. Any change in their stealth field patterns? Webb asked quietly. Negative, sir. They're maintaining full stealth protocols. To anyone scanning this field casually, it still looks completely empty except for rocks. Webb pulled up his own tactical display, which showed the true picture of the asteroid field. Hundreds of red icons marked Kre'tal vessels. The Kre'tal thought they were invisible. They had no idea that human gravity wave detection technology could map the mass distribution of the entire field with such precision that even a hollowed-out asteroid used to hide a warship stood out like a beacon. It had taken human scientists 15 years to develop the technology. Humanity's first contact with advanced alien civilizations had been a wake-up call. Earth's military leaders had immediately recognized that they were technological infants compared to species that had been developing weapons for millennia. They couldn't match alien energy weapons or faster than light drives or quantum computing in a generation, but they could pursue angles that other species had overlooked. Gravitational wave detection was one of those angles. Most species in the galaxy treated gravity as an unchangeable background force, like the fabric of space itself. They had sensors that could detect massive gravitational anomalies like black holes or neutron stars, but they didn't bother with the subtle variations in gravitational fields that could reveal hidden mass. Humans, with their tendency toward paranoid observation and their experience with submarine warfare and stealth aircraft on Earth, had seen the potential immediately. If you couldn't hide mass, then stealth became much harder, and a fleet of 400 warships had a lot of mass. "Sir?" Park said suddenly, her voice carrying a note of urgency despite its whisper. "Priority transmission coming in from the Indomitable. Quantum Channel Alpha." Webb accepted the transmission. Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen, the image grainy due to the limited bandwidth of their stealth communication system, but her expression was clear and calm. "Commander Webb," she said without preamble, "your reconnaissance data has been invaluable. The Third Fleet will be entering the Sigma Draconis system in 6 hours. We are proceeding with Operation Titan Protocol. Your orders are to maintain position and observe until the engagement begins. If things go sideways, you are authorized to break stealth and provide fire support, but only as a last resort. Understood?" "Understood, Admiral," Webb replied. "The Kre'tal are in position and waiting. They have no idea we've been watching them." "Good." Chen's expression softened slightly. "I know 3 weeks in silent running is hell on a crew, Marcus. When this is over, first round is on me. I'll hold you to that, ma'am." The transmission ended. Webb sat back in his chair and allowed himself a moment to feel the weight of what was coming. In 6 hours, this empty corner of space would become a battlefield. Thousands of people, human and Kre'tal, would fight and many would die. But unlike every other battle the Kre'tal had studied, this time humanity knew what was coming. This time humanity had prepared. This time, the prey had seen the predator's hiding place and had laid a counter-trap of stunning sophistication. Webb thought about the Kre'tal commander sitting on his flagship, confident in his perfect ambush. He wondered if the alien understood what was about to happen. Probably not. The Kre'tal had made the same mistake that humans had made, countless times throughout history. They had assumed their enemy was stupid just because they were less technologically advanced. It was a mistake that had destroyed armies since the beginning of warfare. "All hands," Webb transmitted to his crew via internal ship systems. "Prepare for combat operations. We're about to witness something that future military historians are going to write entire textbooks about. The day humanity stopped being the galaxy's newest punching bag and started punching back." Aboard the Tux Indomitable, flagship of the Third Expeditionary Fleet, Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her command chair and reviewed the tactical situation for what must have been the 100th time in the past 6 hours. The Indomitable was a heavy cruiser, one of humanity's most advanced warships. Her hull was layered with composite armor that could withstand multiple hits from particle beams. Her weapons included railguns capable of accelerating projectiles to significant fractions of light speed, missile systems with advanced guidance computers, and point defense lasers that could intercept incoming fire with computer-guided precision. She carried a crew of 430 and represented the cutting edge of human military engineering. She was also, by galactic standards, hopelessly outclassed by Kre'tal capital ships that were 3 times her size and had been refined through millennia of warfare, which was exactly why Chen wasn't planning to fight a fair battle. "Status of all fleet elements," she requested from her executive officer, Commander James Rodriguez. Rodriguez was a stocky man with graying hair and the kind of calm demeanor that came from 25 years of military service. He had served with Chen for 8 years, and they had developed the kind of professional shorthand that made communication almost telepathic. All ships are in position and ready, Admiral. The Vancouver, Mumbai, and Lagos report they are maintaining stealth protocols. The rest of the fleet is on course and will enter the asteroid field in 47 minutes. All crews are at battle stations. All weapons are charged. All countermeasures are loaded. Chen nodded. Communications? We're maintaining standard chatter on open frequencies. Status reports, navigation updates, crew announcements, everything to suggest we're on a routine transit. If the Kre'tal are listening, they're hearing exactly what they expect to hear. Good. Chen pulled up the tactical display that showed the real situation. Her 23-ship fleet was approaching the asteroid field in standard formation. Heavy cruisers in a protective screen, destroyers in support positions, supply ships protected in the center. To any observer, they looked like a fleet focused on defense and logistics, but scattered through that formation, invisible to Kre'tal sensors, were modifications that had been installed in secret over the past 3 months. Every ship carried upgraded gravity wave sensors. Every vessel had been equipped with new targeting computers that could track multiple enemy ships simultaneously through asteroid fields. Every captain had been briefed on Titan protocol and had rehearsed their specific role dozens of times in simulation. And hidden in the asteroid field ahead, completely concealed by their stealth systems, 3 additional human ships waited for the moment to spring their own surprise. The Kre'tal think they know us, Chen said quietly, speaking to Rodriguez but also to the bridge crew who were listening. They've studied our previous engagements. They've analyzed our tactics. They think they understand how we fight. They think we're predictable. She paused, letting her words sink in. They're right that we have patterns. We do value individual lives. We do prefer defensive formations. We do broadcast our movements openly. But what they don't understand is that humans are adapters. We learn, we evolve. And we've had 3 months to prepare for this exact scenario. Rodriguez allowed himself a slight smile. The Kre'tal are about to learn why prey, animals that survive to become apex predators, are the most dangerous species on Earth. Chen pulled up a secondary screen showing historical Earth military engagements. Hannibal's double envelopment at Kenai, the English longbowmen at Agincourt, the American colonists at Lexington and Concord, the Viet Cong in the tunnels of Cu Chi. Throughout human history, technologically inferior forces had defeated superior enemies by using terrain, preparation, and tactical surprise. Today, Chen was going to add another entry to that list. Open a channel to all ships, she ordered. Encryption Protocol Omega. The communication officer nodded. Channel open, Admiral. Quantum entangled system. Completely secure, Chen took a breath. This was it. The moment when she committed her fleet to a battle that would either become a triumph or a disaster. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. In 30 minutes, we will enter the Sigma Draconis 7 asteroid field. Intelligence confirms that 400 Kre'tal warships are waiting in ambush. They believe we are unaware of their presence. They are wrong. She paused, imagining her words being received by 22 other ships, by thousands of crew members who were about to face a battle that outnumbered them 17-1. When we enter that field, maintain your assigned courses and speeds. Look surprised when they decloak. Execute your evasive maneuvers exactly as rehearsed. Trust your training. Trust your sensors. Trust each other. The Kre'tal have set a trap, but we're not walking into it blindly. We're walking into it with our eyes wide open and a plan to turn their ambush into their funeral. They gathered 400 warships in the darkness, hidden by technology we couldn't match. They studied us for months, planning the perfect massacre. They thought we were blind. They were dead wrong. In the cold vacuum of space, 300 light-years from Earth, the greatest military trap in Kre'tal history was being set. High Commander Zek'thar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Vengeance, and gazed upon what he believed would be his masterpiece of tactical warfare. The asteroid field of Sigma Draconis 7 stretched before him like a 3-dimensional maze of rock and ice. Each fragment, from pebble-sized debris to kilometer-wide planetoids, had been mapped with obsessive precision over the past 8 weeks. Every gravitational vector had been calculated. Every possible flight path through the field had been wargamed by the Dominion's most sophisticated tactical computers. And now, hidden within that cosmic debris field. 400 warships of the Kre'tal Dominion waited in perfect silence. Zek'thar was a veteran of 43 campaigns across 17 star systems. His carapace bore the scars of boarding actions on 6 worlds. His tactical acumen had been studied at the Kre'tal Military Academy for 2 generations. He had fought the crystalline Vexatar in the dense nebula wars, had crushed the Hollow Moon Rebellion, and had negotiated the surrender of 3 separate species without firing a shot. But this, he thought with deep satisfaction, would be his greatest achievement. This would be the battle that future commanders studied for centuries. The perfect ambush, the complete annihilation of an enemy force that never saw death coming. "Status report," he commanded, his translator rendering his chittering language into the standard galactic tongue that his multi-species crew could understand. His tactical officer, a young Kre'tal named Sekven, manipulated the holographic interface with practiced efficiency. "All ships are in position, High Commander. The capital destroyers are nested within asteroids 7, 12, and 23. Fighter carriers have concealed themselves in the shadow zones of the larger bodies. Weapon platforms are operational and disguised as standard mining equipment. Our stealth fields are operating at maximum efficiency." Zek'thar clicked his mandibles in approval. The Kre'tal had perfected stealth technology over millennia of warfare. Their ships could bend electromagnetic radiation around their hulls, rendering them invisible to most sensor systems. They could mask thermal signatures by shunting excess heat into quantum storage matrices. They could even dampen the gravitational signatures of their vessels by using exotic matter shields. To any observer, the asteroid field appeared completely normal. Just rocks and ice tumbling through space in obedience to Newton's ancient laws. "And the humans?" Zek'thar asked. Sekven brought up a new display. "The Third Expeditionary Fleet maintains their projected course. 23 vessels confirmed. 7 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and 4 supply ships. They will enter the asteroid field in 6 rotations, following the established navigation corridor to the refueling station at Sigma Draconis Prime." Another officer, a reptilian saurian named Kresk who served as intelligence analyst, added his assessment. "The human communication patterns remain unchanged, Commander. They transmit status reports on standard frequencies. They maintain active sensor sweeps consistent with routine navigation. All indicators suggest they are completely unaware of our presence." Zek'thar allowed himself a moment of contemplation as he studied the tactical display. The human fleet appeared as green icons on his screen, approaching the kill zone with what seemed like blissful ignorance. They had been so predictable, so easy to track, so simple to anticipate. The humans had emerged onto the galactic stage only 78 years ago, when their first faster-than-light vessel had stumbled into Kre'tal space with a crew that was equal parts, terrified and excited. Since then, they had expanded with alarming speed, establishing colonies on 14 worlds and making first contact with 37 different species. They claimed they came in peace. They spoke of cooperation, mutual benefit, and shared prosperity. But the Kre'tal Dominion had ruled the outer spiral arms for 3,000 years, and Zek'thar knew the pattern well. First came the explorers, then the merchants, then the colonists, and finally the warships. Humanity had to be stopped, not destroyed entirely. The Dominion wasn't genocidal, but they needed to be taught their place in the cosmic order. They needed to understand that there were ancient powers in the galaxy, powers that had been waging war when humanity was still hiding in caves from predators. This ambush would deliver that lesson, with brutal clarity. The humans have fought 23 engagements since they entered galactic space, Zek'thar said, speaking as much to himself as to his officers. "We have analyzed every battle, every tactic, every strategic decision. They are brave, I will grant them that. Their pilots show initiative and creativity, but they are fundamentally limited by their psychology." He gestured to a secondary screen that displayed human psychological profiles compiled by Kre'tal intelligence. "They value individual life above tactical necessity. This makes them hesitant to commit to actions that will result in casualties. They become emotionally compromised when facing losses. They maintain rigid command structures that limit adaptability, and most critically, they are optimists." Kresk hissed his agreement. "They believe in the inherent goodness of other species. They assume peaceful intent until proven otherwise. It makes them vulnerable to deception." "Exactly," Zek'thar confirmed. They will enter this asteroid field expecting nothing more than a routine transit. They will maintain their standard formation, protecting their supply ships in the center. When we reveal ourselves and open fire from all angles simultaneously, they will have perhaps 20 seconds of operational capability before their fleet is crippled beyond recovery. Zek'thar brought up a tactical simulation that had been run 700 times. The green icons representing human ships entered the kill zone. Red Kre'tal vessels decloaked on all sides. Lines of fire converged from multiple angles. The simulation showed the human fleet attempting to scatter, but the dense asteroid field limited their maneuverability. Within 3 minutes, 18 of 23 human vessels were destroyed. The remaining 5 were crippled and surrendering. The mathematics are unambiguous, Zek'thar reported. With a 400-23 numerical advantage, superior positioning, and complete surprise, we project 97% probability of total victory with minimal Kre'tal losses. Zek'thar studied the simulation with clinical detachment. War was ultimately about mathematics, about applying superior force at a decisive point, about creating situations where the enemy had no good options. This ambush was mathematically perfect. What the High Commander didn't know, what he couldn't know, because his entire strategic philosophy was built on assumptions that humanity would never challenge, was that every piece of intelligence his analysts had compiled was incomplete. The humans they had studied in those 23 previous engagements had been learning, adapting, and most dangerously of all, preparing, because humanity had a saying that the Kre'tal hadn't bothered to research. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. The human fleet approaching Sigma Draconis 7 had no intention of being fooled. 3,000 kilometers away from Zek'thar's flagship, concealed by the tumbling chaos of the asteroid field and running on emergency power only, the Tux Shadowhawk maintained its vigil. The Shadowhawk was officially classified as a long-range reconnaissance vessel, which was military jargon for a ship designed to hide in places it shouldn't be and watch things it wasn't invited to. See? Its hull was coated with adaptive camouflage that mimicked the spectral signature of common asteroids. Its reactor ran at 5% capacity, making its thermal signature nearly indistinguishable from ambient space. Its crew of 17 had been living in near total silence for 3 weeks, communicating only through hand signals and text messages. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb sat in the cramped observation station, his eyes fixed on the passive sensor displays that showed him everything happening in the asteroid field, without betraying his ship's position. He was a wiry man in his late 30s, with the kind of intense focus that came from knowing that one mistake, one careless energy spike, one transmission on the wrong frequency, would mean death for him and everyone aboard. For 3 weeks, Webb and his crew had watched the Kre'tal fleet assemble. They had counted every ship, mapped every position, recorded every communication, analyzed every tactical deployment, and they had transmitted all of it back to Admiral Chen on a tight-beam quantum-entangled communication system that was, as far as human scientists understood, completely undetectable. "Movement in Sector 7, whispered Ensign Park, the sensor operator. Even though they were alone on the ship and speaking couldn't be detected through vacuum, the crew had fallen into habits of silence. 3 Kre'tal frigates repositioning. Looks like they're refining their kill box geometry." Webb nodded and made notes on his tablet. The Kre'tal were meticulous, he had to give them that. They were constantly adjusting positions, running probability calculations, optimizing their firing solutions. It was the mark of professional military thinking. "Targeting locks confirmed," her weapons officer reported. "We have solutions on 16 Kre'tal vessels. Fire everything," Martinez ordered. "Empty the magazines." The Vancouver's missile tubes opened, and 200 guided warheads launched in a devastating salvo. They erupted from the asteroid like a swarm of angry hornets, their engines igniting as they accelerated toward pre-selected targets. Advanced guidance systems gave each missile autonomous targeting capability, allowing them to adjust their courses around obstacles and evade defensive fire. Across the battlefield, Kre'tal vessels that thought they were safely hidden suddenly found themselves under attack from an unexpected angle. Missiles impacted shields, overwhelmed point defenses, and detonated against hulls. In the span of 1 minute, the Vancouver single-handedly destroyed or crippled 11 Kre'tal vessels. On the Crimson Vengeance, Zek'thar stared at his tactical display in growing horror. What should have been a simple massacre had turned into a chaotic melee. His perfectly positioned ambush was falling apart. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. How did they know? He demanded. Our stealth systems are perfect. They couldn't have detected us. His sensor officer worked frantically at his console. Commander, I'm detecting unusual gravitational wave patterns in their sensor sweeps. I think they've been mapping the mass distribution of the entire asteroid field. They can detect our ships by their gravitational signatures. Zek'thar felt his certainty crumble. Gravitational detection? The Kre'tal had never bothered to perfect such systems because they had excellent electromagnetic stealth. It had never occurred to them that an enemy would approach the problem from such a different angle. All ships, he transmitted on the fleet-wide channel. Reform defensive positions. Concentrate fire on the human capital ships. We still have numerical superiority, but orders and execution were two different things. The carefully orchestrated ambush had dissolved into dozens of individual engagements across the asteroid field. Kre'tal ships that tried to reposition found themselves targeted by human destroyers that appeared from behind asteroids, fired and vanished before return fire could lock on. The humans were using the terrain like water, flowing through gaps, striking from unexpected angles, disappearing behind cover. They fought like pirates, Zek'thar realized with dismay. Like raiders who knew every rock and shadow. How long had they been planning this? How much intelligence had they gathered? How badly had the Kre'tal underestimated their enemy? 40 minutes into the engagement, the battle had become a grinding slugfest that neither side had anticipated. The Kre'tal numerical advantage was being whittled down by human tactical precision, but the sheer volume of enemy ships meant that human vessels were taking damage faster than they could repair it. The TUSS Marathon, a destroyer that had been part of Chen's fleet for 5 years, took a direct hit from a Kre'tal particle beam. Her shields collapsed and the beam burned through her hull, vaporizing crew compartments and melting structural supports. Secondary explosions rippled along her spine as power conduits overloaded. Marathon is reporting critical damage, Rodriguez announced grimly. They're venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Captain Okonkwo is requesting permission to evacuate to escape pods. Chen clenched her jaw. This was the price of warfare. These were the lives that commanders spent like currency to achieve objectives. Permission granted. All nearby ships recover Marathon's crew. Designate her as a navigational hazard. The Marathon drifted through the asteroid field, her hull glowing from internal fires, her crew abandoning ship in small escape pods that scattered like seeds on the wind. 3 human destroyers broke formation to recover the survivors, exposing themselves to additional fire in the process. This was what the Kre'tal had counted on. Humanity's compassion, their unwillingness to leave anyone behind. It was tactically suboptimal, and the Kre'tal intelligence analysts had predicted the humans would do exactly this. What those analysts hadn't predicted was that humanity had planned for this too. Activate the Lagos protocol, Chen ordered. Time to even the odds. 7,000 kilometers away, drifting on a carefully calculated trajectory that made her look like just another tumbling rock, the Tux Lagos received her activation code. Captain Kwame Abara, who had been maintaining communication silence for 3 weeks, finally allowed himself to speak at normal volume. Finally, he said with a grin, power up the gravity disruptor. Let's show these aliens why humanity doesn't always fight fair. The Lagos was an experimental vessel, built around a prototype weapon system that had cost 3 billion credits and required the work of Earth's top quantum physicists. The gravity disruptor was a weapon that no other species in the galaxy had bothered to develop, because the engineering challenges seemed insurmountable and the tactical applications weren't obvious. Humans, being humans, had built it anyway just to see if they could. Disruptor charging, the weapons officer reported. We'll be at full power in 60 seconds. Target the densest concentration of Kre'tal vessels, Abara ordered. I want maximum impact. The gravity disruptor was based on a simple but devastating principle. If you could create localized gravitational anomalies, you could disrupt the finely tuned systems that starships relied on for navigation, inertial dampening and artificial gravity. It didn't destroy ships directly. It just made them unable to fight effectively. Disruptor at full charge, the weapons officer announced. Targeting solution locked on Sector 12. Estimated effect on 47 Kre'tal vessels. Fire, Ibarra commanded. The gravity disruptor activated, and a sphere of warped spacetime expanded from the Lagos at the speed of light. It was invisible to normal sensors, but its effects were immediately obvious. Every Kre'tal ship within its radius suddenly found their navigation systems throwing error codes. Artificial gravity failed, sending crews tumbling. Inertial dampeners went offline, meaning any maneuvering thruster now imposed crushing acceleration on the crew. Targeting computers lost lock as gravitational lensing bent sensor beams unpredictably. 47 Kre'tal vessels effectively became dead weight, tumbling helplessly through the asteroid field. Some collided with rocks, others crashed into each other. All of them became easy targets for human weapons. Target the disabled vessels, Chen ordered across the fleet channel. Don't give them time to recover. Human ships converged on the disrupted Kre'tal forces like sharks sensing blood in the water. Railguns fired at targets that couldn't evade. Missiles struck ships that couldn't defend themselves. In the span of 3 minutes, 31 Kre'tal vessels were destroyed or crippled. On the Crimson Vengeance, Zek'thar watched the tactical situation deteriorate from bad to catastrophic. His 400-ship armada had been reduced to less than 300 operational vessels. Worse, the humans had revealed capabilities that Kre'tal intelligence had never documented. Gravity detection, hidden support ships, weapons that disrupted fundamental physics. All ships execute emergency protocol Delta, he transmitted. Scatter formation. Deny the humans concentrated targets. But even as he gave the order, Zek'thar knew he had already lost. Not the battle. The Kre'tal still had numbers on their side, but the strategic initiative, the psychological advantage, the certainty of victory. The humans had done something that no opponent had managed in 300 years of Kre'tal military campaigns. They had surprised them. Completely, totally, and devastatingly surprised them. As the battle entered its second hour, both fleets had taken significant casualties, but the momentum had shifted decisively in humanity's favor. The Kre'tal numerical advantage was crumbling under sustained human attacks that seemed to anticipate every defensive maneuver. Lieutenant Commander Webb, still watching from his concealed position aboard the Shadowhawk, observed the battle with professional admiration. Captain Martinez on the Vancouver just pulled off a textbook missile swarm attack. She caught a Kre'tal carrier launching fighters and took it out before half its craft could deploy. Ensign Park nodded, her eyes fixed on her displays. The Mumbai is coordinating with destroyers Wellington and Nairobi. They're executing a pincer movement on that cluster of Kre'tal frigates in Sector 9. The aliens are trying to reform defensive positions, but our ships keep hitting them from unexpected angles. Webb had spent 3 weeks in cramped silence watching the Kre'tal prepare their trap. Now he was witnessing that trap become a killing ground for its creators. The Kre'tal fought well. They were professional military forces with centuries of experience. But they were fighting a battle they hadn't prepared for against an enemy they didn't understand. Sir, Park said suddenly, the Indomitable is maneuvering toward the Kre'tal flagship. I think Admiral Chen is going for a decapitation strike. Webb pulled up the tactical feed. Sure enough, the Indomitable was burning hard toward the Crimson Vengeance, using a series of asteroids as cover, while her escort destroyers ran interference against Kre'tal vessels trying to block the approach. Bold move, Webb muttered. If she can take out their command ship, the rest of their fleet might lose coordination. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Chen was thinking exactly that. Rodriguez, how long until we have a firing solution? On the Kre'tal flagship? 2 minutes at current speed, Rodriguez replied. He was monitoring 3 different tactical displays simultaneously, tracking the movements of dozens of ships. But we're going to take fire from those destroyers on our starboard side. The Bucharest and Seoul are trying to draw them off, but they can't engage all of them. Divert power from rear shields to forward, Chen ordered. We only need to survive long enough to take that shot. The Indomitable shuddered as a Kre'tal plasma torpedo detonated against her shields. Warning klaxons blared as the shield generators struggled to compensate for the energy overload. Shield strength at 40%. The engineering officer called out. We can't take many more hits like that. We won't have to, Chen said with grim determination. Kimani, as soon as you have that shot, take it. One round maximum power right through their bridge. The Indomitable emerged from behind a large asteroid, and for a brief moment, she had a clear line of sight to the Crimson Vengeance. The Kre'tal flagship was a massive vessel, easily 3 times the size of the human cruiser, bristling with weapons and protected by shields that could withstand sustained bombardment. But shields had limits, and railguns were very good at exceeding those limits. "Firing solution locked," Kamani announced. "Target confirmed. Firing main gun." The railgun fired with the electromagnetic pulse that temporarily disrupted every sensor on the ship. A tungsten penetrator, magnetically accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance between the 2 flagships in less than a second. On the Crimson Vengeance, Zek'thar saw the human cruiser emerge from cover. He saw the energy spike that indicated weapon discharge. He had time to think one final thought. They were never prey at all. Then the railgun round struck. The penetrator hit the Crimson Vengeance's shields at an angle calculated to maximize penetration. The shields flared, absorbed some of the kinetic energy, but couldn't stop the round completely. The tungsten rod punched through the shield envelope, through 30 meters of composite armor, and struck the bridge directly. The explosion was catastrophic. The bridge compartment, along with Zek'thar and his senior staff, simply ceased to exist. The round continued through the ship, creating a tunnel of destruction that severed power conduits, ruptured fuel tanks, and compromised the structural integrity of the entire forward section. The Crimson Vengeance broke apart, her forward third, separating from the main hull in a shower of debris and escaping atmosphere. Emergency bulkhead sealed automatically, saving much of the crew in the aft sections, but the command ship was effectively destroyed. "Direct hit," Kamani announced with fierce satisfaction. "Target eliminated." Chen allowed herself a moment of relief, then immediately refocused. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Enemy flagship destroyed. Press the advantage. Force their surrender." Across the battlefield, the loss of their command ship sent shockwaves through the Kre'tal fleet. Ships that had been attempting coordinated maneuvers suddenly found themselves without clear orders. Unit commanders tried to take control of their local areas, but without the overall strategic coordination that Zek'thar had provided, their actions became fragmented and reactive. The humans, by contrast, operated on distributed command principles. Every captain knew the overall battle plan and could execute their role independently. The loss of a command ship would hurt, but it wouldn't cripple their ability to fight. "Enemy vessels are breaking formation," Rodriguez reported. "Some are attempting to flee. Others are trying to form defensive clusters. Their coordination is falling apart." Chen studied the tactical display. The Kre'tal had started the battle with 400 ships. Now fewer than 200 remained combat effective, and those were scattered across the asteroid field without unified command. Her own fleet had been reduced to 18 operational vessels, with several more damaged but still fighting. By any conventional military calculation, she should continue the attack and destroy the remaining Kre'tal forces. But Chen hadn't come here to commit genocide or to humiliate a defeated enemy. She had come to send a message. "Open a channel on all Kre'tal military frequencies," she ordered. "Broadcast in Galactic Common and Kre'tal language." The communication officer worked his console. "Channel open, Admiral. You're transmitting to the entire enemy fleet." Chen took a breath, composing her thoughts. This moment would define not just the battle, but potentially humanity's relationship with dozens of species across the galaxy. "Attention, Kre'tal forces. This is Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding the Terran United Colonial Service Third Expeditionary Fleet. Your flagship has been destroyed. Your fleet has been defeated. You are surrounded and outmaneuvered." She paused, letting that sink in. "I am offering you terms of surrender. Power down your weapons and engines. Transmit distress signals for your damaged vessels. We will recover your survivors and provide medical care to your wounded. You will be treated in accordance with the Galactic Conventions on Warfare." Another pause. "You came here to ambush us. You believed we were blind to your presence. You were wrong. Humanity sees more than you know. We prepare for threats you cannot imagine, but we are not monsters. Surrender now and live. Continue fighting and die. You have 5 minutes to decide." The channel closed. On the bridge of the Indomitable, The crew waited in tense silence. "Do you think they'll surrender?" Rodriguez asked quietly. "They'd be fools not to," Chen replied. "They've lost their command structure, half their fleet, and any illusion of tactical superiority. If they keep fighting, we'll destroy them piece by piece. They know it." 3 minutes later, the first Kre'tal vessel powered down its weapons and transmitted a surrender code. Then another. Then a dozen more. Within 10 minutes, every remaining Kre'tal ship in the asteroid field had ceased hostilities. The Battle of Sigma Draconis 7 was over. The aftermath of the battle was, in many ways, harder than the fighting itself. As the adrenaline of combat faded, the reality of casualties and destruction became impossible to ignore. Admiral Chen stood in the Indomitable's medical bay, looking at the rows of wounded personnel receiving treatment. Burns from energy weapon hits, trauma from decompression exposure, radiation injuries from reactor leaks. The ship's medical staff worked with grim efficiency, triaging cases and stabilizing the critically injured. "Final casualty report, Admiral," Rodriguez said, his voice heavy with fatigue. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 6 hours. "We lost 4 ships completely: the Marathon, Kinshasa, Santiago, and Perth. Another 7 vessels sustained major damage but can be repaired. Total human casualties: 347 dead, 592 wounded." Chen closed her eyes briefly. Those weren't just numbers. Those were people with families, dreams, and futures that had been cut short. People who had trusted her leadership and paid the ultimate price. "And the Kre'tal?" she asked. "Preliminary. Estimates suggest we destroyed or crippled approximately 230 vessels. Their casualties are likely in the tens of thousands. We're coordinating with their surviving commanders to organize rescue operations for crews and damaged ships." Chen nodded slowly. "Make sure our medical teams assist with Kre'tal wounded as well. I meant what I said about the galactic conventions. We're not butchers." "Already in progress," Rodriguez confirmed. "Captain Martinez on the Vancouver has volunteered her ship's medical facilities. Several of the Kre'tal commanders have expressed surprise at our willingness to help their wounded." "They expected us to be savages," Chen said. "They judged us by their own standards. We need to show them who humanity really is." She turned away from the medical bay and made her way to the observation deck. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the aftermath of the battle spread across the asteroid field. Debris floated everywhere: twisted metal, frozen atmosphere, fragments of ships that would never fly again. Rescue shuttles moved between wrecks, searching for survivors. Human and Kre'tal vessels worked side by side to recover escape pods. "Admiral?" a voice called out. Chen turned to see Commander Webb, who had just docked after spending 3 weeks aboard the Shadowhawk. He looked exhausted but managed a tired smile. "Hell of a battle." "Marcus," Chen acknowledged. "Your reconnaissance made all of this possible. Without your data, we would have walked into that ambush blind for real." Webb shrugged. "Just doing my job. Though I have to say, watching it all unfold from the sidelines was torture. My crew was ready to break stealth and join the fight multiple times. I'm glad you didn't. We needed you as our insurance policy." Chen gestured to the scene outside. "What do you think the Kre'tal are thinking right now?" Webb considered the question. "I think they're reevaluating everything they thought they knew about humanity. They studied our previous engagements and concluded we were predictable. They didn't understand that we were learning from each battle, adapting, preparing for the day someone would try to use that predictability against us. The classic prey animal strategy," Chen mused. "Appear weak, appear predictable, lull the predator into overconfidence, then strike when they're committed to the attack." "Exactly. The Kre'tal have been apex predators for so long that they forgot what it's like to be prey. Humans remember. It's coded into our DNA from millions of years of evolution. We're paranoid, we're suspicious, and we prepare for threats that might never materialize. It's not rational, but it keeps us alive." Chen smiled slightly. "I wonder if this will change how other species see us." "It already has," Webb said. "I've been monitoring galactic communication channels. News of this battle is spreading fast. The species that dismissed us as upstarts are paying attention now. The ones that thought we were easy targets are reconsidering. We just went from being the galaxy's newcomers to being a force that destroyed a 400-ship Kre'tal armada. In the wreckage of the Crimson Vengeance, rescue teams found survivors in the aft sections of the broken ship. Among them was Sub-Commander Zek'thar, who had been in the secondary command center when the human railgun round destroyed the bridge. 3 days after the battle, Zek'thar sat in a secure room aboard the Tux Indomitable, recovering from his injuries and waiting to be interviewed. He had burns on his carapace and one of his primary eyes was bandaged, but he was alive. Many of his colleagues were not. Admiral Chen entered the room, accompanied by Rodriguez and a Kre'tal language specialist. She sat down across from Zek'thar, her expression professional but not hostile. "Sub-Commander," she began, "I want to be clear about your status. You are not a prisoner. You are a survivor of a military engagement, and you will be repatriated to Kre'tal space along with all other survivors as soon as medical clearances allow. This interview is voluntary." Zek'thar clicked his mandibles in acknowledgement. "I will cooperate, Admiral. I have questions of my own." "Then let's exchange information," Chen suggested. "You tell me what you want to know about the battle, and I'll tell you what I can." "Fair?" "Fair," Zek'thar agreed. He paused, gathering his thoughts. "How did you know?" "Our stealth systems are the best in the galaxy. Our tactical planning was perfect. We had studied your species for months. How did you know we were there?" Chen leaned back in her chair. "The short answer is gravity. Your stealth systems can hide electromagnetic signatures, thermal output, and even quantum signatures, but they can't hide mass. Every ship has mass, and mass creates gravitational effects. We developed sensors sensitive enough to detect those effects." Zek'thar's translator conveyed his surprise. "Gravitational detection? But the computational requirements to map a gravitational field with that precision would be enormous." "The power consumption alone is substantial," Chen agreed. "We had to build quantum computing networks just to process the data in real time. It took us 15 years and cost more money than most planets' annual budgets. But we did it because we knew that eventually, someone would try to use their superior stealth technology against us." "You prepared for this," Zek'thar said slowly. "For years. You built weapons and sensors and tactics specifically for a battle like this." "We prepared for the possibility," Chen corrected. "We didn't know it would be the Kre'tal specifically, but we knew that as newcomers to galactic civilization, we would be tested. Species would want to see if humans could be intimidated, defeated, or pushed around. We decided we couldn't match everyone in raw technology, so we focused on being unpredictable and over-prepared." Zek'thar was silent for a moment, processing this information. "High Commander Zek'thar believed humans were predictable. He thought your psychology made you weak. He was wrong." "He was partly right," Chen admitted. "We do value individual lives. We do prefer peaceful solutions. We do broadcast our movements openly in most circumstances. But he made the mistake of thinking those characteristics made us weak or stupid. They don't, they make us human. And humans have survived everything from predators to ice ages to our own self-destructive tendencies. We don't survive by being the strongest or the fastest. We survive by being adaptable, cooperative, and prepared." "The hidden ships," Zek'thar said. "The Vancouver, Mumbai, and Lagos. They were in position for weeks?" 3 weeks. Their crews lived in near total silence, running on minimum power, waiting for a battle that might never come. That's the kind of patience and preparation that kept our ancestors alive, when there were things in the darkness that wanted to eat them." Zek'thar clicked his mandibles again, a gesture that the translator indicated was thoughtful consideration. "We underestimated you. The entire Dominion underestimated you. We saw a young species and assumed you were immature. We saw your compassion and assumed you were soft. We saw your openness and assumed you were naive. You're not the first to make that mistake," Chen said. "Throughout human history, opponents have underestimated us. Sometimes we even encourage it. There's a human phrase, speak softly and carry a big stick. It means you can be polite and diplomatic while also being prepared to defend yourself with overwhelming force." "I will report this to the Dominion Council," Zek'thar said. "They need to understand what happened here. Not just that we lost a battle, but why we lost. We lost because we fought an enemy we didn't understand using tactics that enemy had already anticipated." Chen nodded approvingly. "That's good analysis, Sub-Commander. When you make your report, I want you to include one more thing. Tell your council that humanity doesn't want war with the Kre'tal Dominion. We don't want territory or tribute or submission. We want to coexist peacefully, to trade, to share knowledge, maybe even to become friends. But we will not be victims. We will not be bullied. and we will not be underestimated without consequences. I will convey your message, Zek'thar promised. News of the Battle of Sigma Draconis 7 spread across the galaxy at the speed of faster-than-light communication. Within a week, every major civilization knew that the human Third Expeditionary Fleet had destroyed a Kre'tal ambush force that outnumbered them 17-1. The reactions were varied and intense. On the Kre'tal homeworld, the Dominion Council convened an emergency session. The loss of 400 ships and High Commander Zek'thar was the worst military disaster in 3 centuries. Hardliners called for massive retaliation. Moderates urged caution and diplomacy. The debate raged for 3 days before the Council reached a decision. They would sue for peace with humanity and establish formal diplomatic relations. The vote was close, but the deciding factor was Sub-Commander Zek'thar's report. He described in detail how thoroughly the humans had anticipated and countered every aspect of the Kre'tal ambush. He explained the technological innovations that made humanity far more dangerous than their youth suggested. And he conveyed Admiral Chen's message about coexistence. The humans are not our enemies by necessity, one council member argued. They become our enemies when we treat them as such. Perhaps it is time the Dominion learned to coexist with a species that refuses to be dominated. In the Vextar Crystal Nexus, the crystalline intelligence that governed one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations recalculated its threat assessment of humanity. The Vextar had dismissed humans as insignificant when they first emerged. Now the Nexus flagged humanity as a moderate threat with high growth potential. Vextar diplomats were dispatched to Earth to establish better relations. On the trading hub of Merchant's Rest, a neutral station that served as a crossroads for a dozen species, the news sparked intense discussion among the merchant captains and corporate representatives who gathered there. Humanity had just proven they could defeat a major military power. That made them valuable as trade partners and dangerous as enemies. Within days, human merchants on Merchant's Rest found themselves receiving better trade terms. Species that had demanded unfavorable contracts suddenly became more reasonable. The implicit message was clear. Nobody wanted to give humanity a reason to demonstrate their military capabilities again. And on Earth, in the headquarters of the Terran United Colonial Service, Fleet Admiral Marcus Thompson read Admiral Chen's after-action report with mixed emotions: pride at the victory, sorrow for the casualties, and concern about the future. "They'll test us again," he said to his chief of staff. "Maybe not the Kre'tal, but someone else. Some species will see this as a challenge, not a warning." "Perhaps," his chief of staff agreed, "but now they'll approach us differently. With respect. With caution. With the understanding that humanity is not an easy target." "That was always the goal," Thompson mused. "We couldn't become the strongest species in the galaxy overnight, but we could become the species that nobody wanted to fight. The one that seems friendly and cooperative but has a bite that you don't want to experience." He pulled up casualty reports from the battle. 347 names, 347 families that would receive notifications, 347 funerals to conduct. "Make sure every family receives full honors and benefits," he ordered, "and make sure they know that their loved ones didn't just die in a battle. They died sending a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity will not be prey, not now. Not ever." 6 weeks after the Battle of Sigma Draconis 7, a Kre'tal diplomatic vessel entered the Sol system under flag of truce. It was an unprecedented event. The first time a Kre'tal diplomatic mission had traveled to another species' homeworld in over a century. Ambassador Velkan, a senior member of the Dominion Council, stood on the bridge of his ship as Earth grew larger in the view screen. The blue-green world looked so peaceful, so vulnerable. It was hard to imagine that the species living on that planet had destroyed 400 Kre'tal warships. "We are receiving approach vectors from Earth Traffic Control," his pilot reported. "They're directing us to dock at Geneva Orbital Station." "Proceed," Velkan ordered. He had volunteered for this mission despite knowing it might be dangerous. The Kre'tal needed to make peace with humanity, and peace required someone willing to face former enemies with dignity and honesty. At Geneva Orbital Station, Admiral Chen waited in the formal reception area. She wore her dress uniform, with its rows of medals and insignia that marked her as one of humanity's senior military commanders. Behind her stood a contingent of diplomats, military officers, and security personnel. When Ambassador Velkan entered the station, Chen stepped forward and offered the Kre'tal gesture of respectful greeting. a gesture she had learned specifically for this occasion. "Ambassador Velkan," she said. "Welcome to human space. Thank you for coming." Velkan returned the gesture. "Admiral Chen, it is unusual for me to thank someone who destroyed a fleet under my government's command. But your conduct in the battle and the aftermath has earned my respect. You could have slaughtered survivors. Instead, you saved them. You could have humiliated us. Instead, you offered honorable terms. War is ugly enough without adding cruelty," Chen replied. "Please follow me. We have much to discuss." In the conference room, humans and Kre'tal sat across from each other at a negotiating table. The atmosphere was tense but professional. Both sides knew that the future of their relationship would be determined by what happened in this room. "Let me begin with an apology," Velkan said, surprising everyone. "The Dominion Council acknowledges that the ambush at Sigma Draconis 7 was an act of aggression against humanity without just cause. We acted on the assumption that you were a threat that needed to be contained. We were wrong. We offer our sincere apologies and our commitment to peace." Chen nodded slowly. "The Terran United Colonial Service accepts your apology. We also acknowledge that our rapid expansion into the galaxy may have appeared threatening to established civilizations. We could have been more communicative about our intentions. Going forward, we propose establishing formal diplomatic relations, including embassies, trade agreements, and military communication protocols to prevent future misunderstandings." The negotiations continued for 3 days. By the end, humanity and the Kre'tal Dominion had agreed to a comprehensive peace treaty that included formal diplomatic recognition and establishment of embassies, mutual defense pact against external threats, technology exchange programs in non-military fields, trade agreements benefiting both species, establishment of a joint military commission to prevent future conflicts, Kre'tal agreement to support human admission to the Galactic Concordat, an alliance of major civilizations. "One final item," Velkan said on the last day of negotiations. "The Dominion Council wishes to know how humanity will use the leverage this victory has given you. Many species now view you as a rising military power. What are your intentions?" Chen considered the question carefully. "Humanity's goal has always been to find our place in the galaxy. We want to explore, to learn, to grow. We want to trade with other species and form friendships. We want to contribute to galactic civilization, not dominate it. But we also want to be clear, we will defend ourselves. If threatened, we will respond. If attacked, we will fight back. We hope that message has been received." "It has been received," Velkan assured her. "Across the entire galaxy." 5 years after the Battle of Sigma Draconis 7, Commander Marcus Webb stood in front of a lecture hall at the Terran Naval Academy. Before him sat 200 cadets, the next generation of human military officers, listening intently as he described the battle that had changed humanity's place in the galaxy. "The key lesson from Sigma Draconis 7, Webb said, is that technology and numbers don't determine victory. Preparation, intelligence, and tactical flexibility do. The Kre'tal had superior numbers and excellent technology, but we had better intelligence, more thorough preparation, and tactics they couldn't predict." He pulled up a holographic display showing the asteroid field and the positions of both fleets. "Notice how the Kre'tal positioned their forces for optimal crossfire. It was textbook tactical doctrine, perfect on paper. But they made one critical assumption, that we wouldn't know they were there. When that assumption proved false, their entire battle plan collapsed." A cadet raised her hand. "Sir, how did we know they would set an ambush at that specific location?" "Good question, Cadet Ramirez. We didn't know for certain. But intelligence analysts noticed pattern changes. Merchant traffic through Sigma Draconis decreased. Communication relay satellites were repositioned. Energy signatures consistent with large-scale military movements were detected. None of these things were definitive proof, but together they painted a picture. We decided to investigate, and Lieutenant Commander Webb here," he gestured to himself with a self-deprecating smile, "spent 3 weeks in the most uncomfortable surveillance mission of his career, confirming our suspicions." Another cadet spoke up. "Sir, what happened to the gravity disruptor? The weapon the Lagos used? Are we deploying it fleet-wide?" Webb shook his head. "The gravity disruptor was a one-time strategic surprise. After the battle, the Kre'tal and other species immediately began developing countermeasures. Within a year, most major fleets had shielding that made the weapon ineffective. That's another lesson. Technological advantages are temporary. The moment you reveal a secret weapon, everyone starts working on defenses against it. Use your advantages wisely because you might only get to use them once. The lecture continued for another hour, covering every aspect of the battle. The intelligence gathering, the tactical planning, the execution, the diplomatic aftermath. Webb shared everything, including the mistakes and near disasters that had almost cost humanity the victory. In conclusion, he said, as the lecture drew to a close, Sigma Draconis 7 taught the galaxy that humanity is not to be underestimated. But it should have taught us something too. We're not invincible. We won that battle through careful preparation and tactical surprise. Those advantages won't always be available. The next enemy we face might be better prepared, might have studied us the way we studied the Kre'tal, might have their own surprises waiting. So stay paranoid, stay adaptable, keep learning, keep preparing for threats that might never materialize, because that's what kept our ancestors alive for millions of years, and it's what will keep humanity alive among the stars. The cadets applauded as Webb concluded the lecture. As they filed out, several approached with additional questions. Webb answered each one patiently, remembering his own days as a cadet, hungry for knowledge and eager to prove himself. Later, in his office, Webb found a message waiting from Admiral Chen, who had retired from active service 2 years earlier, but still consulted for the military. The message was brief. Marcus, heard you gave the Sigma Draconis lecture to the new cadets. Hope you're scaring them appropriately. Remember, our job is to make sure the next generation is even more paranoid and prepared than we were. That's how humanity survives. Sarah. Webb smiled and composed a reply. Don't worry, Admiral. I told them everything, including the parts where we almost screwed up. If these cadets aren't having nightmares about tactical preparation, I'm not doing my job right. 10 years after the Battle of Sigma Draconis 7, humanity had firmly established itself as a major player in galactic politics. The Terran United Colonial Service had expanded to 47 colony worlds. Trade with dozens of alien species brought prosperity to human settlements, and most importantly, no one had attempted a military action against humanity since the Kre'tal ambush. On the anniversary of the battle, a memorial was dedicated on Sigma Draconis Prime, the refueling station that the Third Fleet had been traveling to when the battle occurred. The memorial listed every human who had died in the engagement, 347 names carved in granite imported from Earth. Admiral Chen, now 72 years old and fully retired, attended the dedication ceremony. She stood before the memorial wall, her hand resting on the cool stone, reading names she had memorized years ago. Captain Okonkwo of the Marathon, Lieutenant Patel of the Kinshasa, Ensign Tom of the Santiago. Each name represented a life cut short, a family that grieved, a future that never happened. Do you ever wonder if it was worth it? A voice asked behind her. Chen turned to find Rodriguez, her former executive officer, who had retired the same year she did. He looked older too, his hair completely white now, but his eyes still sharp. Every day, Chen admitted. 347 dead. For what? To send a message? To prevent future attacks? How do you measure that cost against hypothetical futures that might never have happened? You measure it by looking at the galaxy now, Rodriguez said. No major conflicts involving human worlds in 10 years. 47 colonies thriving. Millions of people living safely because potential enemies think twice before threatening us. Those 347 people died to protect all of that. Chen nodded slowly. I know. I've read the analysis. I've seen the diplomatic reports. I know that the battle changed everything for humanity. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are different things. They stood together in silence, two old soldiers remembering a battle that had defined their lives and shaped their civilization's future. I received a message last week, Chen said eventually, from Ambassador Velkin, the Kre'tal ambassador. He wanted to inform me that they're building their own memorial on their homeworld for the Kre'tal who died at Sigma Draconis 7. He invited me to the dedication ceremony. Are you going to attend? Rodriguez asked. I am. He and I have become friends, surprisingly enough. We share an understanding. We both sent people into battle. We both live with the consequences. The fact that we were on opposite sides matters less than you might think. Rodriguez smiled slightly. You know what the cadets at the academy call you? The admiral who saw the ambush. They study your battle plan like it's sacred text. You're a legend. Legends are for people who don't have to live with the memories, Chen said quietly. I'd trade the legend for those 347 lives in a heartbeat. I know. That's what makes you a good leader. You never forgot the cost. As the ceremony began, Chen and Rodriguez took their seats among the crowd of veterans, active military personnel, colonists, and families of the fallen. The speeches were eloquent, praising sacrifice and courage and victory. But Chen barely heard them. She was thinking about a different speech, one she had never given publicly. War is not glorious, she thought. It's necessary sometimes, but never glorious. We won at Sigma Draconis 7, but winning doesn't mean anyone should celebrate. We survived. We sent a message. We protected our species. Those are accomplishments, but they came at a cost we should never forget. After the ceremony, Chen approached the memorial wall one last time. She placed her hand on the name of Commander Okonkwo, the first casualty of the battle. We remembered you, she said softly, all of you, and we made sure your sacrifice meant something. I hope that's enough. 50 years after the Battle of Sigma Draconis 7, the galaxy had changed in countless ways. Humanity had become one of the major powers, with over 200 colony worlds and representation on the Galactic Concordat Council. The Kre'tal Dominion had become humanity's closest ally, with joint military exercises and deep cultural exchanges. But some things never changed. Deep in an unnamed asteroid field, 3,000 light-years from Earth, the Tux Night Watcher maintained silent vigil. Her crew of 22 had been there for 6 weeks, running on minimum power, observing a region of space where suspicious activity had been detected. Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo, granddaughter of the captain who had died on the Marathon, sat at the sensor station, her eyes fixed on passive gravitational readings. She was young, ambitious, and proud to carry on her grandmother's legacy. Multiple mass signatures detected, she reported quietly to her commander. Configuration consistent with military vessels attempting stealth deployment. 47 contacts and counting. Her commander, Captain Zhao, studied the readings. Unknown species? Confirming yes, sir. Spectral analysis suggests Velcrin Confederacy vessels. They're setting up what looks like an ambush position along the shipping lane to the Proxima colonies. Captain Zhao nodded slowly. Transmit all data to Fleet Command via Quantum Channel. Market Priority Alpha. And Lieutenant, sir, your grandmother would be proud. You've got her instincts for spotting trouble before it finds us. Okonkwo allowed herself a small smile. Just doing what humans do best, sir. Watching, waiting, making sure we're never the prey again. 3,000 light-years away, at Fleet Command on Earth, the intelligence was received and analyzed within minutes. Within hours, a response fleet was being assembled. Within days, diplomatic channels would open with the Velcrin Confederacy, giving them a chance to explain their actions before military action became necessary. But if diplomacy failed, humanity would be ready. They were always ready, because 50 years after Sigma Draconis 7, the lesson had been learned by the entire galaxy. You could hide from humanity's sensors. You could disguise your ships. You could plan the perfect ambush in complete secrecy. But humanity would still be watching. Humanity would still be preparing. Humanity would still be waiting. They had learned that lesson as prey animals on the African savanna 2 million years ago. They had refined it through countless wars and conflicts throughout their history, and they had proven it definitively on that day in the asteroid field when they turned a perfect ambush into a devastating defeat for those who thought humans were blind. The galaxy had many ancient species with superior technology and vast empires, but humanity had something that couldn't be built or bought. The paranoid vigilance of a species that had spent eons watching the shadows for predators. And now, humanity was the one in the shadows, watching, always watching. Admiral Chen, now 92 years old and living in quiet retirement on Mars, received the intelligence report about the Velcrin situation. She read it carefully, noting the parallels to Sigma Draconis 7, another ambush being prepared, another species that thought they could surprise humanity. She composed a brief message to Fleet Admiral Thompson, who had taken over strategic command of all human military forces. Marcus saw the Velcrin report. Looks familiar, doesn't it? Remember what we learned. Let them think they're clever. Let them think they're hidden. Then remind them what happens when you try to ambush apex predators who used to be prey. give them hell. Or better yet, give them the chance to back down with dignity. Either way, make sure the lesson sticks. We're not victims. We never will be again. Sarah Thompson read the message and smiled. The old admiral still had the fire. He composed his response. Already on it, Sarah. The Velkrin are about to get a history lesson. I've assigned the 7th Fleet to handle it. Their commander is a student of yours. She knows the playbook. We'll be fine, and they would be. Because humanity had learned the most important lesson a species could learn: never stop watching. Never stop preparing. Never assume you're safe. The galaxy was vast and filled with dangers. But humanity had survived worse. They had survived when they were weak, when they were primitive, when they were scattered and vulnerable. Now they were strong, advanced, and united. But they still remembered what it felt like to be prey, and that memory kept them sharp, kept them vigilant, kept them ready for whatever threats might emerge from the darkness between the stars.